Hey everybody, in this video, I'm going to explain why I have decided to retire from my job as a therapist. And in doing so, I'll give you a feel for the type of content I'll be posting on this channel. My name is Kev. I've been a therapist in private practice for the past 8 years. Prior to that, I did frontline work with homeless youth. Prior to that, I was a university student studying sports psychology. Prior to that, I was a child, but in my family system, there was a history of incarceration and addiction. So basically what I'm saying is that everything I do or ever have done, personally or professionally, has had something to do with mental health. And over that time, I have noticed some patterns. Now, some of these patterns pertain to the individual process of growth itself. People's problems have differences. People's solutions have similarities. Therapists like to use this phrase treatment arc, which is basically just a more clinical sounding way of saying healing journey. Treatment arcs sometimes are things that therapists will create at the beginning of therapy in order to map out a potential trajectory of change. Or they might be something that therapist and client do after a chunk of therapy in order to reflect back on the therapeutic process and pull out steps or skills that were helpful to the individual along the way. This can give the therapy client a bit of a roadmap for how they might navigate similar problems if and when they arise down the road, and it can give the therapist new intel on how they might smooth out or accelerate the healing process for future patients. But what a lot of people don't know is that if you took, let's say, 100 treatment arcs and put them side by side, sure, everybody's problems will be different, but the underlying principles that tend to get people from point A, feeling shitty, to point B, feeling solid, those tend to have commonalities. What I mean is just basic mental health 101 literacy principles that can be applied across groups of people and across different types of problems. Sharing some of these principles with you is a part of what I'm going to do on this channel. And fortunately, it's now way easier to do it because more and more people are being public about their own mental health treatment arcs, healing journeys, growth processes. So it is easier for me as a therapist or retired therapist to sit back and suggest what treatment arcs for people in the public eye may have been and what may have been some of the skill sets associated with them. Okay, here's a small example of this from my website on which I have referenced the 4 most common presenting concerns that people have reached out to me about over my years in private practice as a therapist. Here you see the concerns themselves, as well as some of the associated symptoms, as well as the work, which I call it here, which is basically just plot points along their specific treatment arc, and of course, the outcome. So I'm really looking forward to elaborating and expanding upon this type of mental health literacy content in videos moving forward, but that is not the reason why I'm retiring. The reason why I am retiring is because of some of the patterns I've been noticing in the mental health industry, which to me is an industry that is in dire need of a redesign. And I'm not saying that I have the solution here. I am just saying that I will no longer be complicit in the problem. I am still pro-therapy. I believe that effective and ethical therapists who you vibe with and who you can afford are worth their weight in gold. And while that is true, that's also like a lot of variables. What makes a therapist effective in the topic I am looking to receive support around? What is the difference between the fucking alphabet soup of professional titles that therapists have? What is the difference between talking to a nice person who seems empathic and somebody who's actually going to track and push me towards my specific therapeutic goals? And what am I supposed to do? Just pay this session fee every single week for the rest of my life? Or is there like a clear endpoint here anywhere at all? These are industry problems, and they tend to benefit the therapists while hindering the individuals seeking therapy. This can stop whenever we as a profession decide that it should. Because the same reasons why not everybody needs or can afford a personal trainer are the same reasons why not everybody needs or can afford a personal therapist. And that is why I'm retiring as a therapist. Not because I don't believe in it, but because I do believe that the industry could be better serving the individual. There is not a cookie cutter user's manual when it comes to mental and emotional health. Yes, there's a lot of good general information out there, but it tends to be surrounded by a lot of bullshit. And understanding how to sift through the shit and into the quality information out there, and then which of that quality information specifically applies to you and your mental and emotional health goals, that can be a confusing and time-consuming process. And that process, the understanding and translating and decoding and applying process, that is not actually therapy yet. And I believe it's very important to delineate a psychoeducation or mental health literacy process with a therapeutic process. So I am stopping my private practice to start a public practice. I'm focusing exclusively on what I'm calling pre-therapy, which is not a replacement for therapy. It's more like a prequel to therapy. It's a curated database of theory, practice, and arts in a no BS, no jargon way related to specific mental and emotional health topics. So feel free to follow along because we are building something new for the individual and for the industry. Because there is another side to mental health.